CIU Local 503. We're a union of caregivers and public workers, and I'm honored tonight here to help MC this event. And just really want to appreciate and thank Portland State University and everyone who's hosted this event to make it successful. We are here tonight because Oregon Attorney General Dan Rayfield has launched the Safeguarding Oregon Federal Oversight Forum. This series of forums complements the important work Attorney General Rayfield is doing with his Federal Oversight and Accountability Cabinet and his attorney generals across the country, which we are honored to be joined by, to hold the federal administration accountable to the rule of law, but also to really hold them accountable to making sure they're protecting Oregon's values and Oregon's communities. In these truly unprecedented times, Attorney General Rayfield and his Democratic Attorney General colleagues are truly the last line of defense when it comes to protecting our rights and our freedoms as Oregonians. Together, they're fighting to push back against policies that have overstepped presidential powers, and they're doing that with legal challenges that have been highly successful in the courts so far. We're also honored to be joined by Arizona's Attorney General and Attorney General Rayfield's partner in crime, Attorney General Kris Mayes. How many times? Yes, thank you, Kris. We hope that you can bring some of our rain back to Arizona with you, so don't worry, we have plenty here in Oregon. Attorney General Mayes is just a strong consumer advocate and an attorney who has distinguished herself as a fighter for people in a lifetime of public service. So really honored to thank you for joining us tonight. I also just want to recognize Representative Rob Gnosis here tonight and Alana Pirtle-Guinea, Council President. Thank you for joining us as we have this conversation about how we can keep Oregonians safe and how we can keep our state and our values lifted up in this national climate that we're all in. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about how this event is going to go. We're going to hear directly from members of the community about the impacts that federal overreach have had on them, their families, and their communities. We're going to be here for a little while, like a couple hour or two, to make sure that we can hear from folks and ask some questions. And we're going to have some invited panelists, and then we have some folks who have asked to come up and speak to be heard on different topics. When I call you up, you're going to have 2 minutes to speak, and you're going to be able to sit here in this front row. And please be mindful of time. We're going to track it a little bit to make sure that we keep moving along. We'll make sure that everyone, as many people as we can, have a chance. And then at the end, if you had a chance to submit a question, we will try to do some questions and answers to make sure that we're hearing from the different types of things that people are concerned about in their communities that may not have been addressed yet. And so I am going to turn it over here to Attorney General Rayfield and Attorney General Mayes to just give us some opening comments.
And thank you, Melissa, and thank you everybody for being here this evening. We really appreciate you coming on a Thursday evening when you could easily be at home with family or doing anything, frankly, at home. And I'm also just couldn't be more happy to have Attorney General Mayes here with us tonight. It's just an honor to be able to share the space with her. And I'm sure a lot of you are like me. Every morning when I wake up, one of the first things that I do is I check the news. Being on the West Coast, you never know what has happened through the night. Often, our days are started at around 4 a.m. to 5 a.m. in the morning as Attorney General's offices across this country really begin to liven up and start monitoring what is going on in the Trump administration. The Trump administration right now is taking actions on a day-to-day basis that are impacting Oregonians and citizens of the United States in negative ways. And they're doing all of that in a way without public input and entirely in the dark. And it's these actions, whether they're aimed at undermining environmental protections, attacking healthcare access, stripping away the rights and dignity of vulnerable communities, that have created an atmosphere of fear and also a chilling effect across our state and across our country. Our democracy was meant to have checks and balances, co-equal branches of government, free press, public input, and all of this without intimidation. The president seems to have forgotten this, never understood it, or frankly, just doesn't care. And that's why we're here tonight, to hear from you. Democratic attorneys general across this country are coming together to host these town halls, to hear from you on issues that are important to you and how these cuts and decisions, again, that are being made in the dark are impacting you and your communities. Our first town hall was yesterday in Eugene, and this is our second town hall. The first town hall nationally was in Arizona, and I was very grateful to attend that town hall. And I think the spirit that you're going to hear from that is that the president won't listen to the people of the United States. We will do it for him. And your voice in this forum does two things. Number one, it does not allow the Trump administration to make these decisions and run away and hide from public input. Number two, what it does is it gives us information so that we, as attorneys general, can better represent you and our states across this country. So I want to take a moment and emphasize something that's incredibly central to a lot that's going on right now. The president does not have unilateral power to ignore the Constitution of the United States or our federal laws. In other words, while the president may be an incredibly powerful human being, he does not have the ability to jump in a time machine, go back hundreds of years, become a king, and avoid and elude oversight. Democracies just don't work that way. And that's the whole point here. If the president had worked with Congress to do a lot of the things that he was trying to do, we wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have had to go to Arizona, although I do love Arizona. But in response, Democratic attorneys general across this country have filed more than 13 lawsuits. And these lawsuits are to protect our Constitution and our rules of law. And they're on topics about preventing mass layoffs, fighting the dismantling of our education department, private taxpayer information, defending against gender-affirming care attacks, preventing the loss of hundreds of millions of dollars that come into this state, among many other things. A really good example from last week, on Friday, we filed 3 lawsuits, one of which was a National Institute of Health lawsuit that had about $240 million at stake for Oregon Health Sciences University. And these are on things that all of us in this room deeply care about. It's about cancer research, HIV research, diabetes, opioid addiction. That's real, that's here, that's miles away from where we're sitting here today. So again, tonight, we're here to hear from you. Your voices and your stories absolutely matter as we go through this. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your schedules to be here with us today. Democracy only works when we do it together, when we commit to having incredibly difficult conversations, and then most importantly, we act after we have those conversations. So with that, I do want to turn it over to the amazing Attorney General from Arizona, Kris Mays.
Thank you. Thank you, Attorney General Rayfield, and it is great to be here. I get a little rain for the first time in a long time, but it is a joy. And hello, Oregon. Hello, Oregon. So it is really an honor to be with you, and again, thank you, AG Rayfield, for inviting me. You have an amazing Attorney General. You have an amazing Attorney General in this guy, and I have really loved getting to know him. We've only been working together for 3 months, and it feels like 30 years at this point, given the number of lawsuits that we have had to file on behalf of Americans. And as Dan mentioned, we have 23 Democratic attorneys general in America today who are fighting like hell to make sure that we protect and preserve this beautiful, precious, irreplaceable democracy of ours. and we are not going to stop until the job is done. As the Attorney General mentioned, Arizona has filed now, as of today, 12 lawsuits. I think you guys probably 13 or so. And we are doing this together. I just want to give you a little bit of color on how this is working sort of behind the scenes. Dan and I have gotten to know each other over Zoom, frankly, because we meet, all 23 of us meet almost every day on Zoom to plan, to strategize, to zero in on the litigation that we know we're going to have to do. Our planning really started before the election. Obviously, we were hoping for the best, and it didn't happen. And then we met in Philadelphia in a very fateful meeting right after the election. And we knew we had a huge job ahead of us, and we knew we were going to have to do everything we could to slow down and stop an unconstitutional presidency. And so that is what we have been trying to do and have been doing. And you know what? We've been doing a lot of winning. A lot of winning going on. A lot of winning going on. On behalf of our states, and we have won what's called a temporary restraining order in almost every one of the cases that Dan just outlined. A TRO, which is a really hard thing to get, and it basically means that a federal judge is saying that the Democratic AGs are more likely than not to win this case. And it's putting on pause the action that President Trump took. And the birthright citizenship case was a really good example of that, where we filed a case to ask a federal judge to declare that unconstitutional. And you know what? It took a 92-year-old Reagan-appointed judge 25 minutes to declare that unconstitutional. Reagan-appointed judge up in Washington State, right, Dan? That was up in Washington State. So, we're fighting like hell, and we are winning, and the courts are agreeing with us. As Dan said, we have 3 branches of government. 3! And we have something called the separation of powers. And that is really what sort of, as it is at the bottom of all of these cases, and what President Trump and an unelected billionaire and Elon Musk and Doge are violating week after week after week. And so what we know is that we do not have a king in this country. We do not have a king. And what we cannot have is an oligarchy in this country. And Americans agree on that. I mean, all we have to do is look at this room. Look at this room. And we had a room like this in Phoenix where 500 people turned out. We had a room like this in Minneapolis where the AGs also gathered with Attorney General Keith Ellison. We had 1,200 people turn out in Minneapolis on a really cold night, at least for me. The rain, the cold, I don't do so good. I mean, this is hazard duty for me, but 70 to 75 degrees. 1,200 people turned out to express their outrage at what is happening today in our country. And of course, we saw that in the hands-off protests that happened all across America, including in my state. And I will say, I was born and raised in a very, very Republican part of my state. In fact, I am a former Republican myself who switched parties in 2019 because I couldn't take it anymore. And And in the town of my birth, in my hometown, Prescott, Arizona, where Barry Goldwater announced his presidential campaign, they had 2,000 Arizonans turn out to protest. 2,000. So Americans are making their voices heard, and we are doing, as AGs, the very best we can to protect you and to preserve our Constitution. I do want to say a couple things, and then this is really about you. There is likely more to come, and I hate to say this, but I think the worst may be yet to come. We think that the Trump administration may try to devastate and eviscerate almost every federal agency in America. They will probably try to fire even more federal workers. We know they're about to try to slash Medicaid by $800 billion. We know they're messing with Social Security. And so there's more to come. But that's why it's so important for the Democratic AGs of this country to continue to stand up and for you to stay involved. And I'll say this. I really think that the survival of our nation is going to come down to three things. I call it the 3 C's. Crowds, you got that covered. The courts, Dan and I have that covered. And courage. And all of us can have that covered. And every time Dan and I file one of these lawsuits against the Trump administration or Elon Musk, I find myself thinking about what past generations would be thinking about this moment in our nation's history. And I know what they would be thinking, all of those generations that fought and died and sacrificed for our country. I believe in my heart that what those generations of Americans are doing is they are speaking to us across the ages. And they are saying, fight. Fight for your country. Fight now. Because now is the only time that matters. And so every time we do one of these town halls and I see people like you come out at night when you could be doing other things, I am so grateful because you are fighting and you are patriots. You are all patriots. Every time you come out to a meeting like this, every time you speak out at a meeting like this, every time you stand up for your country, you are patriots, and let no one ever take that word away from us. So thank you guys for being here, and we're looking forward to hearing from you.
Do you think this is going to work now? It is? Does it work now? Oh, great. Thank you to the team who made this work. Appreciate it. I just want to recognize, thank you for both of your words, but really thank you for all of your work on behalf of Oregonians, on behalf of our country, on behalf of our neighbors and our communities. You and your colleagues are really one of the last lines of defense. And so I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your staff team's work. Thank you for all the people involved in making this possible. But we do want to hear from folks. So I just want to, we have some invited panelists who are going to come up, and then we have people who have signed up to come up and talk with you all about all the issues and how they're impacting Oregonians on a daily basis. So I'm going to invite the first 4 folks up, and then they can just go and speak. So I have Dr. Sarah Kennedy from Planned Parenthood, Sandy Chung from ACLU Oregon, Matt Newell-Ching from the Oregon Food Bank, and Graham Trainer from the Oregon AFL-CIO. Welcome. And Dr. Kennedy, do you want to kick us off? Did you turn on the green? Yeah. No, that is not working. I don't think any of those are working. Your guys is working?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, that one's working. Why don't we just move
Is
around?
this one working? Yeah.
Yeah. It'll be great.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Dr. Sarah Kennedy. I am an obstetrician and gynecologist and a mother of 3 and the president and CEO of Planned Parenthood Columbia Willamette. I'm really honored to be here to speak on behalf of reproductive health and Oregonians just seeking basic health care. So I first want to just say thank you so much to Attorney General Rayfield, who has been truly the best of allies in this really hard time. Thank you to the team for setting this up and giving people a space to come to hear voices and to be heard, because there's not a lot of that happening right now. So thank you to everyone who is here. I wanted to start by just really stating the obvious, which is that the Trump administration and Elon Musk are absolutely committed to defunding Planned Parenthood. And the intent is to remove basic health care rights and healthcare services to millions and millions of Americans. And there's lots of different ways that they're going about this, but that's the intention, and that is the goal. And the evidence is clear that when people and when healthcare providers cannot use Title X funding, cannot use Medicaid to take care of low-income people, that people suffer, that cancer goes undetected and untreated, that STI rates soar. We have a syphilis epidemic in Oregon right now, and we have a rising number of Oregonian babies being born with syphilis. That will worsen without Medicaid and Title X funding. That access to birth control is severely reduced, which leads to more unplanned and unintended and undesired pregnancies. And general health and community health of all of us, even if we have resources ourselves and the best of insurance, if our neighbors and our neighbors' children do not have access to health care, we all suffer. And that is the intent of Trump and Elon Musk. So we can't let that happen in Oregon. And Oregon has a lot at stake. Oregon should feel very proud. We have expanded Medicaid more than any other state in the country. It's amazing. And that reflects our values that healthcare is a human right. And healthcare, basic preventative healthcare, should be the right of every Oregonian across the state. Nearly 25% of Oregonians get healthcare through Medicaid. It is just one of the most common insurers in the state of Oregon. And so there's a lot at stake for us going forward. Planned Parenthood largely is dedicated to taking care of low-income people. The majority of our patients are on Medicaid. We take care of people no matter what, no matter their immigration status, no matter if they have insurance, no matter if they show up without an appointment. We're here to take care of them. And 90% of what we do is unrelated to abortion. Now, we're proud to provide abortion. It's basic health care. I'm an obstetrician and gynecologist. You can't provide pregnancy care without having abortion as an option. And 90% of what we do at Planned Parenthood is preventing cancer and providing birth control and providing education and preventing congenital syphilis. And most of those patients are on Medicaid. So if Medicaid goes away, all of those things get worse. Between the 2 affiliates in Oregon, we serve 110,000 visits a year and growing. We see demand growing, not just from Oregonians, but from people seeking refuge and seeking basic health care from other places. And in rural communities, you know, we're here in Portland. Most of Oregon is not urban Portland. And for most of those rural communities, often Planned Parenthood is the only provider for those people. So they come to us for all kinds of medical conditions because they do not have access to other healthcare services. So today, because things happen and change on a daily basis, the Senate and the House passed a budget resolution that is setting the stage for pretty quickly $800 billion worth of cuts. Almost definitely, most of those are coming from Medicaid. So this is coming, it will affect Oregon, and we must stop it. And we must use every tool at our disposal to stop that from happening because we have so much at stake here in this state. So I just, as a closing, just really, again, want to thank all of you for being here. I want to thank our panelists. It's been a joy to work alongside people who are fighting on behalf of all kinds of rights that, and organizations that are taking care of Oregonians. And again, to thank Attorney General Rayfield. And then just remember that this next week, our members of Congress are going to be coming home for the April recess. And it's really important that if they return, when they return back to DC, that the number one message that they're hearing from us is hands off Medicaid. Do not touch Medicaid. So I just encourage you all to continue with your activism, continue coming to these meetings, and I'm really grateful for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kennedy and Sandy with the ACLU Oregon. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Good evening, everyone. And thank you, AG Rayfield and AG Mays, for convening this important conversation this evening. My name is Sandy Chung. My pronouns are she and her. I'm the executive director of the ACLU of Oregon. The ACLU of Oregon is an organization that defends and advances democracy, civil liberties, and civil rights. Right now, we have more than 45,000 members and donor supporters across the state of Oregon. Since Election Day in November, we've gained 7,000 members. Clearly, Oregonians are passionate about defending democracy. Democracy is important to me, not just because of my job, but as part of my personal history. My family and I immigrated from South Korea in the early 1980s, and at that time, South Korea was under a military dictatorship. In 1980, my parents became profoundly disillusioned with their country after the government suppressed pro-democracy protests in a city called Gwangju by killing, beating, and torturing thousands of people, including college students. This led to their decision to immigrate to the US. You see, Gwangju is my dad's hometown. About a month after President Trump's re-election on December 3rd, 2024, then President Yoon of South Korea tried to do fascism in Korea again. He declared martial law. In response, South Korean lawmakers scaled the walls of their parliamentary building, and they blocked their doors against Yoon's henchmen, and they passed a law, emergency law, to block Yoon's efforts at becoming a dictator. At that same time, millions of South Koreans took to the streets to protect their democracy. And last week, Yoon's impeachment was finalized when all 8 justices on South Korea's Constitutional Court affirmed the impeachment. I share with you South Korea's story because we, the people of the United States, are not alone in our struggle for democracy. And as we can see from South Korea's story, we can resist fascists and we can win. South Korea's story also shows us how we can protect the rule of law. South Korea's lawyers and courts were critical to defending their democracy, but so were lawmakers and everyday people who acted in solidarity. Everyone has an important role to play in protecting the rule of law, not just lawyers, although we can see the lawyers and attorney generals certainly have important roles. At the ACLU, we have been clear with President Trump and his billionaire cronies that we will always resist fascism. At the ACLU, we have a saying, see you in court. Since Trump re-entered the White House, the ACLU has gone to court and gone to court again and again and again to defend the many people and institutions who have been targeted and harassed and even imprisoned by Trump simply for exercising their basic constitutional rights. Our blue state AGs have gone to court again and again too. And Attorney General Rayfield and Mays, I think the ACLU saying, see you in court, is something that you are saying often too. In our fight against fascism, we are fighting for the heart of our country. And in my view, this is ultimately what the fight is about. As a bully, Trump goes after the people he thinks are the most vulnerable, who he believes we the people will leave behind. Since Inauguration Day, he has been particularly inhumane and evil against our neighbors who are immigrants and refugees, transgender, and who have spoken up against war and genocide and for Palestinian freedom. So, my fellow Oregonians, I am going to ask you, are we going to let Trump and Elon Musk and their billionaire cronies bully our immigrant and trans neighbors and justice activists?
No. Come on, louder.
Louder. Are we going to leave anyone in our communities behind?
No.
We are all in agreement. We're going to document this. We are all in agreement that Trump and his billionaire cronies are bullies, and Oregonians and Arizonians are going to take down the bullies.
Woo!
The ACLU of Oregon community is grateful to Attorney General Rayfield and Mays because their actions reflect the everyday values of people in Oregon and Arizona across the country. They are fighting for all the people, including the most vulnerable communities that the current White House is targeting. The ACLU of Oregon believes in the strategy of solidarity, of saying no to fascist bullies, and we believe this is critical to defending our democracy. So I want to thank you, Attorney General Rayfield and Attorney General Mays, for your solidarity, and please know that the ACLU is in solidarity with you and all the people of the United States. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sandy. And I think we're going to have you both, so they're going to move, and then I'm just going to call people up two at a time, because I think that's going to work, and that's what we want to do. So thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Dr. Kennedy. One more round of applause, please, for Planned Parenthood and ACLU. Matt, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. Good evening, Attorneys General Rayfield and Mays. My name is Matt Newell-Ching. I'm the Senior Manager of Public Policy at Oregon Food Bank, and our mission is to end hunger and its root causes, because no one should go hungry. Yet the reality for too many Oregonians is sobering, and too many folks in Arizona as well. Today, 1/3 more Oregonians are experiencing hunger than before the pandemic. Last year, we saw 2.5 million visits to our network of over 1,200 food assistance sites across the state. That's a 31% increase from the previous year. And we attribute these factors to things that shouldn't surprise anyone. It's the high cost of food. It's the high cost of housing, as well as the expiration of pandemic-era assistance, like the child tax credit and emergency SNAP. And unfortunately, I mean, these are problems that are, somewhat beyond our control. And so it's really frustrating because, unfortunately, our jobs are just getting a lot harder because of these self-inflicted wounds, because of the choices that this administration is making. Just since January, USDA decisions there have resulted in the cancellation for Oregon alone of 90 truckloads of food. That's about $6 million worth of food that we would have distributed to Oregonians who would be coming to food assistance sites like food pantries, free food markets, shelters. That's food that we will be unable to distribute. So we're making calls out to our community to say, can you help fill the gap? But this means that essentially when folks show up, there's going to be less food there. It also means we're not supporting farmers and producers of food. Decisions at USDA have also resulted in the termination of agreements between local schools and farmers. It's resulted in, just in Oregon alone, reductions for 268 producers across 19 counties. And, I want to thank you both for the lawsuit that you filed due to the the funding freeze on January 28th. Remember, just take us back. This seems like years ago, but January 28th, I mean, I'll just never forget this day, because you talked about waking up at 4 in the morning. We woke up at 6 in the morning that day to find out they proposed freezing $3 trillion of lawfully appropriated funding for our communities. And we had people calling up Oregon food banks, folks who are with our partner organizations. We're really worried. What is happening? Am I going to lose my SNAP? Are our kids going to have meals at school to eat? Is WIC okay? We don't know. And we had to tell them, like, look, we are trying to figure this out. We were calling our state agencies. They didn't know. There was just confusion. And I know for a lot of ways, chaos is the point here. But the way that this is experienced for Oregonians, it was devastating. We are glad that the courts put a stop to this. Thank you both for joining that lawsuit. That was one of those successful ones that happened that day. So yeah, thank you. Shout out. So as we, and because I think you're right, we haven't seen the worst of this yet. And so some of what we're asking you today is just to continue. We really appreciate your efforts when we see overreaches, particularly related to human needs, to step in there and make sure that Oregonians and Americans who need assistance can count on it. So we often say that food alone is not enough to end hunger. That's why our mission includes focusing on the root causes of hunger. And so when we talk about that, we talk about disparities. And so two things I want to highlight this evening. One are the disparities in hunger experienced by Oregonians who are immigrants and refugees. Oregonians who are immigrants and refugees are more than twice as likely to experience food insecurity than citizens who are white. Despite that, like Oregon Food Bank, we have a hard rule at our 1,200 agencies that we do not require identification when somebody asks for food. If somebody's coming to ask for food, we provide food, full stop, right? Despite that, we're hearing increasingly from community members who are worried that doing everyday things like sending their kids to school, like whether to go to the doctor or to request food from a food pantry, whether that is safe. And so things like the revision of the DHS Safe Places memo, right? Like those are the ways that we just request that you continue to stand up for Oregonians so that we can just live our lives in the ways that are able to make sure that we can take care of our families. Just a couple other things on the immigration front. We ask you to challenge these have been reported recently, efforts to weaponize confidential taxpayer information for purposes of immigration enforcement. We also, this just broke in the New York Times today, efforts to take away Social Security numbers from immigrants who have been lawfully issued Social Security numbers, folks who are working in our communities, and just inexplicably to efforts to take this away. It harms the ability of families to provide for our families. And last, I just want to say is that we also see disparities in Oregonians and Americans who are trans experience higher rates of hunger than adults who are cisgender. We urge you to use every legal tool you have to protect everyone in our communities from state-sponsored discrimination and to ensure access to gender-affirming care, accurate identification documents, and full civil rights protections. So thank you for coming and listening to our concerns this evening. And yeah, see you in court. Go for it, Graham.
Thank you, Matt. Graham, take it away.
Great. My name is Graham Trainer, and I'm proud to serve as president of the Oregon AFL-CIO, the statewide federation of labor unions representing over 300,000 working Oregonians. Thank you to AG Rayfield for convening these important forums and for all your work holding the line for Oregonians and our values. I also know that my colleagues in the Arizona labor movement are grateful for the worker-centered leadership and fighting spirit of their AG. So it's really an honor to welcome you, AG Mays, to the great state of Oregon. So we all know that these are truly unprecedented times. So as Oregon workers face this chaos and confusion, we're all navigating by the hour. We're proud to have leaders here in this state and at every level of government in this state who are holding the administration and their corrupt billionaire friends accountable in all the ways when there's overreach, and who are defending Oregon values by using every lever and tool they can find. But let's be clear. Working people are still bearing the brunt of this administration's actions from numerous angles and fronts. And while it would be impossible to articulate all of the various ways the working class here in Oregon is experiencing these impacts in brief testimony, I'll do my best to give voice to just some of them. So on top of the firing of tens of thousands of federal workers, just last week, one of the most significant union-busting moves taken by a president in history was an executive order issued to strip collective bargaining and organizing rights from hundreds of thousands of federal workers at more than 30 agencies under the guise of national security. That was on the heels of an earlier move to strip those same rights from 47,000 TSA workers with the stroke of a pen by the agency's new administrator, and you'll hear directly from one of those Oregon TSA workers this evening as well. Immigrant workers and student workers here in Oregon and across the region being targeted and attacked, including union activists being taken by ICE, like Alfredo Lelo Juarez, a Washington farm worker union leader, an SEIU Local 925 member, Llewellyn Dixon, to name a few, or the 4 University of Oregon international students who just this week had their visas revoked. Insult was added to injury when news broke this week. I think Matt alluded to part of this, but when the deal was struck between the IRS and ICE to share immigration-related information, this is a gross and inhumane action targeting workers who fundamentally make our communities run. And we hope that state attorneys general I'm not going to say hope, we trust and expect that our Democratic AGs in this country will add this issue to their list of fight back strategies. Sarah mentioned this earlier. Efforts in Congress to cut over $880 billion from Medicaid to pay for trillions in tax cuts for the very rich would have far-reaching impacts for Oregon and working people, as you've heard. With nearly 30% of our state's budget coming from Medicaid, paying for the services that keep communities running, like special education, K-12 services, in-home care for seniors and people with disabilities, and mental health services. And a few more stats to put these impacts into perspective. Here in Oregon, 45% of all pregnancies and 57% of all children are covered by Medicaid. Another, higher education and research workers at Oregon institutions, and A.G. Rayfield mentioned this earlier, facing the threat of layoffs and cuts to programs with attacks on NIH funding. Construction workers facing disruptions and delays on Oregon projects funded by the Inflation Reduction Act or bipartisan infrastructure law, and projects being canceled now as a result of the current and escalating trade war. Or renewed efforts to privatize the U.S. Postal Service and threats to this treasured institution, the only federal agency listed in the United States Constitution and the only parcel service required to deliver to every single address in this state and in this nation. Or rollbacks and continued threats to cut gender-affirming health care on top of the hostility and inhumane rhetoric towards the LGBTQ community. It's having an impact on the safety and the well-being of workers in every corner of this state. Or the executive order dismantling the Department of Education, to round it out, adding one more hurdle for working people to access the financial aid that they need to go to college or pursue a trade. And kids from working class families, especially kids with disabilities, will be left behind, unable to access the education that they need to succeed. So those are just some of the stories from working people that we've been hearing in just the last few months. And while it is indeed a chaotic and terrifying time to navigate these waters, the labor movement will continue fighting in the courts, in Congress, in the streets, and in state legislatures to give voice to these stories and defend our fundamental freedoms. And the Oregon labor movement looks forward to continuing to partner with A.G. Rayfield and other elected leaders as we not only defend Oregon values in the face of these challenges, but show the nation what's possible with our innovation and our progress. So thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, Matt and Graham. I'm going to invite up Trang Kim, who's a TSA worker, and Liana Coffey with Basic Rights Oregon. Come on up. Trang, do you want to kick us off?
Yes. for giving me this opportunity to speak. My name is Trang Kim, and I've been with TSA for 22 years. I became a union member with AFGE since its inception in 2011. The recent decision to eliminate the collective bargaining agreement between TSA and AFGE is not just an administrative change. It's a significant setback for worker rights, morale, and ultimately public safety. TSA officers are on the front lines every single day. They're tasked with detecting dangerous threats, managing high-stress environments, and making judgment calls that protect millions of passengers. The CBA wasn't just about negotiating pay. It created a framework of fairness, consistency, and employee voice. It gave officers some stability in a job that demands constant vigilance. Without that agreement, employees are now subject to more arbitrary scheduling, inconsistent discipline, and a lack of recourse when issues arise. That creates an environment of uncertainty and instability. Morale drops, turnover rises, and the experience level for the job declines. And that directly affects security. In our line of work, when you don't feel supported or heard, it's harder to perform. It's harder to stay focused. In our line of work, there's no room for distraction or burnout. Every lapse in attention or judgment could have serious consequences. Removing the CBA undermines the very workforce we rely on to protect the traveling public. So, if we want secure checkpoints, strong national security, and a professional TSA, then we need to restore those collective bargaining rights. Because when the workforce is respected and stable, the mission is safer and the public is better protected. Thank you.
Liana.
Good evening. I am here in support of the lawsuit against the Trump administration for barring trans people in military service.
Can you move your mic up just a little bit? Yeah, sorry.
Is that better? Excellent. Didn't want to be too close. I'm here to thank you for the continued support of trans people in military service and the lawsuit brought against the Trump administration. I'd like to share my story. One grandfather was a navigator on the F-4 Phantom, the other a master sergeant in the U.S. Air Guard. I'm pretty sure my uncle patched up every airframe the U.S. Air Force has to offer. The men in my family tended to aim high, as the U.S. Air Force slogan goes. So looking for direction, looking to find myself, I joined up too. I wanted to do something bigger, to find opportunities to expand my horizons and ultimately my understanding of myself. Unfortunately, don't ask, don't tell, and the environment it created meant fitting a rigid cookie-cutter expectation of what it meant to be an airman. Hard emphasis on man. I want to say I wish I had the strength to be myself back then, but it wasn't for lack of strength. I didn't have the option. I wasn't allowed to be myself. I had to choose between what I saw as an opportunity to help others to be a part of something bigger, or simply to be me. I didn't see myself anywhere really, so what was one more place I didn't feel like? I could be myself. Being forced to perform pushes people to make apathetic decisions. How can you make the right choice when everything you do is based on how others will see you? If I didn't feel supported for being who I am because the mandates of the time told me, me and everyone around me, I couldn't be, how could I feel like I would be supported when calling out a wrong or an injustice? When my life depended on fitting into a narrow definition of what others expected me to be, breaking rank could be a life-altering and life-ending decision. My survival meant being who I could safely be, and that wasn't me. Some people might say what makes a good soldier is simply following orders, but truly serving our country means you believe in making the world a better place, in helping and protecting, in humanity and justice, the value of life. These are values that statistics tell us trans people have in abundance. According to the Williams Institute, 19% of the trans community has served in the armed forces, with most recent census data stating that roughly 15,500 are serving openly today. The introspection required to reflect inward and think critically, combined with the courage and self-assuredness it takes to speak up and out with your truth, even in the face of fierce opposition, uniquely equips trans people to make the hard right choices, the unpopular but ethical ones. Today, I truly see the people around me. I want them to feel seen and heard. I'm more passionate, I think clearer, I retain more, I make better decisions, and connect more deeply. It's striking how much energy goes into maintaining a facade, leaving little for growth or connection. These are the qualities we should value in our service members, those making life and death decisions. We need people who care, who are curious, who seek better solutions, who recognize the humanity in others. This is who we should hope to meet on the field, the one who sees our humanness and makes the hard, right choice. It would take me 10 years to unpack and unlock the ability to be myself, to be Liana, to be strong in my softness and vulnerability, to be assured in my authenticity, to be able to stand in front of you today as me, a trans veteran, a woman, a silly little gremlin, the strongest, best version of myself. She would have served this country well.
I just want to say a special thank you to Trang and Liana. Like, it's so hard to stand up and tell your story, so I really appreciate you joining us today. So thank you. And now I'm going to invite our last invited panelist, and then we'll move to public testimony, Brittany Van Sitters.
My name is Brittany Van Sitters. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the political and organizing director at the Oregon League of Conservation Voters. We think of ourselves as the political arm for the environment. We work to elect pro-climate candidates like Attorney General Dan Rayfield. We work to pass pro-environment policy and hold our elected officials accountable. I want to thank Attorney General Rayfield for hosting this forum series and for the opportunity to speak on this panel. What I'm about to share will only scratch the surface of all the devastating impacts of Trump and DOGE cuts on the environment and the climate, and what that means for clean air, clean water, and the health of our communities. in the climate and what that means for clean air, clean water, and the health of our communities. In the climate and what that means for clean air, clean water, and the health of our communities. A lithium mine exploration project in southeast Oregon, originally opening a 5-day public comment period on the proposal. The region is home to vulnerable sage grouse and is widely used by local ranchers for cattle grazing, both of which would be at risk if the project were to move forward. Lastly, I want to bring attention to the impact that DOGE is having to NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. NOAA is critical to many aspects of our lives, from the weather apps on our phones to the life-saving weather alerts that protect our coastal communities, fishery industry workers, wildfire fighters, and U.S. Armed Forces across the globe. Per DOGE's request, the Secretary of Commerce is reviewing all NOAA contracts above $100,000 and making even more cuts while disregarding the technical merit of these contracts. NOAA also conducts essential climate research that cannot simply be paused and restarted again in 2 or 4 years, limiting our ability as a state and a nation to fight climate change. DOGE cuts hurt all Oregonians, no matter where we live or who we voted for. And our most vulnerable, BIPOC, low-income, and rural communities are hurting first and worse. We need all of Oregon's leaders to stand up against the Trump administration, Elon Musk, and DOGE, and protect Oregon now. And I want to end by saying thank you again for Attorney General Rayfield and Mays for leading that charge.
We are gonna start on public testimony, but before we do that, I always find I get to listen to many of these partners and people who are fighting back all the time, and I know you do too. I find it so overwhelming, right? Like there's just so much coming at us right now. So I just want to remind us what AG Mays said earlier, right? We're gonna fight back with the 3 C's, right? Crowds, courts, and courage. And I just think it's important to remind ourselves when we hear these stories and people share their stories that we can fight back on this. So, because I'm a union organizer, by the way, so I'd like to do just a little bit of a chant to like help us through this. So, are we gonna show up at a crowd? Yes. Come on. Are we gonna show up at a crowd? Yes. Are we gonna take them to the courts? Yes. And do we have the courage to do it? Yes. Okay, now we can keep going, right? Every time we need to break it up a little. There's just so much coming at us. We need to remember that we can fight back. So I thank you to all of our invited panelists. We're now going to have people who signed up to come share their stories with our attorney generals. You're going to have 2 minutes, and we are going to keep you to that so that we have a little bit of time at the end for questions. I'm going to invite up the first 2 people, Sadie Davis and Debbie Lawrence. Can you come on up? And then on deck, the people who are going to come up after them is going to be Ben Frayne Jr. and Yvonne Rivero. So do I have Sadie Davis? Sadie Davis here? Some folks signed up early, so they might not all be here. So Sadie Davis? Okay, I do not. Or Debbie Lawrence? Either one. Okay, Debbie Lawrence, come on up. Ben Frayne Jr.? Are you here, Ben Frayne Jr.? Okay, great. Great. Okay, well, and then after Debbie and Ben, Yvonne Rivero, are you here? Okay. What about Jackie Brookman? Okay, Jackie, you're going to come up next. Next, not yet. And then what about Abdul Wasi? Abdul Wasi? Great, you're going to be up next too. So we'll have you come up right after that. So you want to kick us off, Debbie, and you have 2 minutes. Oh, can you turn on the mic? Sorry. Go ahead and just push the red button. Yep.
I'm Debbie Lawrence. I am a resident of Charbonneau. I didn't think I would really be up here, even though I checked my name. I don't have a personal story how this affects me at a very granular level. My heart hurts for this country. And I feel like not enough of us have been able to have this voice. So I thank you for calling me up here. My heart is going very quickly here. My heart hurts because of all the cruelty that these policies have inflicted on people who have done nothing to deserve that treatment. Words can't express it. I never thought I would be at a town hall meeting like this. I never thought I would be in front of anybody or behind them or whoever having to say this, living in this country. Whether it be, I grew up in Minnesota, I moved to Texas, I moved to Colorado, and now I'm here in Oregon. I love this country. Every state has something special in it that you can't find anywhere else. And I feel that with all of these haphazard, that seem to be haphazard, but the chaos is the point. And the hurt is the point. I grew up that you love people. And you share that love. And that's, to me, being a citizen of the U.S. is like having another religion. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you. Ben.
My name is Ben Fain Jr., and I live in Loa, Oregon, just west of downtown Portland. I have a couple of things that I would like to say something about, and one of them is Social Security. Just about everybody in this room, I believe, has one of these. Little kids have them now. My brother, younger brother, had passed on just about 3.5 years ago. My son was helping his aunt go through some financial papers and also some family artifacts. And he came home, he lives with me, and he came home and he had these 2 cards, 2 of these in a little baggie, and a Ziploc bag. And one of them was signed 1937. That was my father's. And the other one was signed 1936. I was born in 1938, and Social Security was just getting started, and it came out of Franklin Roosevelt's administration. I retired from TriMet in 2002 after 26 years of driving a bus. And I immediately got onto Social Security. I've been on Social Security now for 23 years. I doubt if I'll live 133 years, but I would like to have Social Security as long as I am alive. And I don't feel like I earned it. I think I contributed to it, but I think that everybody who works has that available to them and should. My father got on Social Security in the 60s, my mother in the 70s, and both had it for the rest of their lives. They didn't have it as long as I've had it, but it was there for them. The other thing I would like to say something about is the federal interest rate, Federal Reserve interest rates. In my opinion, those rates have a lot of emotion to set them. And there's mortgage interest, consumer loan interest, and interest paid by banks to customers. I believe that all of those should come down, and that would help our economy a lot. I would like for both of you to talk to every member of Congress, or every time you talk to a member of Congress, to push that out there to them.
Thank you, Ben. One last comment? Any last comments? But wrap up. It'll wrap up.
I didn't spend 6 years in the U.S. Marine Corps to watch my country be torn apart by a bunch of self-centered individuals.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you.
you.
Okay, we have Jackie Brookman and Abdul Wasi. And then on deck is Joel Shapiro here. Joel Shapiro and Terry Cummings. Terry Cummings here? Any Terry Cummings? Okay, no, I'm not. Sarah Adams? Oh, Terry's here? Great, okay. So on deck is Joel Shapiro and Terry Cummings. Go ahead, Jackie, yeah. Oh, can you turn on the mic? Just go ahead and push that button, yep.
Okay. I'm Jackie Brookman, and I'm really pleased to be here. And I am a Social Security recipient, and for 4 years, I have just expected my Social Security without any worry, and in the last couple months, I get terrified when, when it is like the due date for my Social Security. And I was watching Rachel Maddow on Monday night, and I thought, is there anybody that's going to protect us? What happens if I don't get my check, or anybody else? And then Rachel interviewed the wonderful Attorney General from Arizona and said, excuse me, there is if you look on my website, there is a form that I hope we have in Oregon very soon, where if you don't receive your payment, if it is wrong, if it is delayed, that you can fill out a form, and collecting the names and researching what happened, and if push comes to shove, a lawsuit. And I thought, oh, I can breathe a little easier. I immediately went to your website, Attorney General Rayfield, and I said, can we do what Arizona's doing? I said, we need that. And I actually did get a response from somebody from your office today, but that's primarily why I'm here. I'm sick about all the cuts. I feel like my blood pressure is higher. I'm just more anxious and more angry, and I also want to be an activist citizen. So that's why I'm here, and I would love to hear that you're going to also follow suit with what the Attorney General in Arizona has done.
First off, amazing idea from the Attorney General May.
Love you. Love you.
No,
Okay.
So again, wonderful idea, Attorney General Mays. We're looking at, and I think this is something that all Attorney Generals are exploring, is how do we gather impact, not just from Social Security, but from so many different other ways that we're being impacted. I cannot, and so the one thing that is always tough in the world is when you go to your tech department and you say, hey, I'd like to start doing some additional things, and they go, oh my gosh, what crazy idea did you come with on the way to work today? And we told them those ideas.
Yeah.
And what I can tell you right now in Oregon, we're working on, it will actually move different things in the different portions of the webpage to have a federal oversight and accountability webpage that will have several buttons on there. We have a lot of toolkits right now that go out to education, they go out to on sanctuary status, a lot of other things like that. There will also be a forum to talk about broader impacts that are going on federally. Social Security would absolutely fit into that category where you could put that in there, so we can keep tabs on it, and also partner with our congressional partners as well to make sure people continue to get their Social Security.
Excellent. Thank you.
If I could, and first I'll just say the idea came from a conversation that we were having on one of our Zooms. You know, we just started talking about Social Security and also hearing just bits and pieces about people seeing disruptions to their checks. And I will tell you, and this is very alarming to me, that we now, my staff just informed me that we now have 6 dozen people who have reported that they've had a disruption to their check.
Horrible.
In Arizona, or had something, they've gone on to the website to try to get Social Security started, the website freezes up, or they call and they're hung up on. And so something is happening inside Social Security right now that is not good.
Right.
We know they fired 7,000 employees. So, my personal suspicion is this is sabotage from within. And the first step for us as AGs to be able to do something about it is to gather that evidence. So please do report it to Dan, report it if we're urging Arizonans to report it so that we can then potentially file a lawsuit if what we suspect is happening is happening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Abdul.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Abdul. I am from the Community Empowerment Foundation, which is one of the Afghan communities of Portland, Oregon. I know it hasn't been addressed so far in this town hall about the immigration and the immigrants in this society. I did hear a couple folks touch basing on it, but there are certainly a lot of issues that the immigrants, especially the Afghan immigrants, are suffering from. And I would like to thank both of you, Attorneys General, for convening this town hall. And this gives us an opportunity to raise the concerns of our community members. The concerns start with the immigration status of people here. There are people, as the lady earlier here mentioned, that their blood pressure goes high as they hear the situation going on here, because back in the home country, they have to, if they are deported or they go back to the home country, they are gonna suffer from brutal activities of the vicious Taliban there. But here they are in a very uncertain situation as well. On the other hand, the Afghan community here, majority of them are low-income families. I doubted that their incomes are yearly more than $35,000, $40,000. And if these cuts that we are hearing are going to happen, these are the very first communities that are going to be affected because they are really relying on the Medicaid, SNAP, WIC, and utility assistance, housing, and so on that are going on through the federal funding. And I would like to request your support on both the immigration and the support that they are receiving here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Abdul. Thank you very much. I have Joel Shapiro and Terry Cummings. And then on deck, I have, before you start, let's see, is Sarah Adams here? Sarah Adams, great, you're next. And then David Moskowitz. Then you're after that. Okay, Joel, take it away.
Thank you. I really appreciate two dedicated public servants coming out to listen to the public at a time when a lot of us are lacking hope and pride in our public servants. It's really wonderful for you to be here to listen. As Attorney General Rayfield knows, I'm the Executive Director of the Trafficking Law Center, which provides legal services to victims of domestic sex trafficking primarily. This is National Crime Victim Rights Week, as you probably know. We are facing a dire shortage of funding. I was in Salem for a hearing of the Judiciary Committee, and to be honest, I don't understand all of the roots of that shortfall, but it's extremely dire. It affects primarily the services that are provided to victims of sexual assault and domestic violence, but also to trafficking. The other thing that I wanted to mention is the need for trauma-informed legal services. As a former deputy DA myself, I know that prosecutors and the courts are not very trauma-informed. And we also just have a dearth across the country of the access to legal services. I'm part of a group called the National Survivor Law Collective. We had our monthly conference call yesterday, and pretty much the theme every month is there are no lawyers out there for trafficking survivors. So those are the things that I wanted to mention. And to Attorney General Mays, if you haven't had a chance, I encourage you to visit Starfish Place, which is a wonderful facility in Phoenix that I've had a chance to tour. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Joel. Terry.
Hi, my name is Terry Cummings. I'm a resident of West Lynn. I'm a retired nurse and former city council member and so forth, a Medicare recipient, Social Security recipient. I want you to know that especially after listening to everything today, and I would not be able to stand to open up the newspaper or even sit here and listen to all this without knowing that you're there fighting for us. Thank you so much. It means so much to me. I appreciate coming after you because actually what I'm here for is something that you probably didn't expect to see, but it's actually a problem in almost every state in the United States. And that is that we do have a problem with coercive sexual abuse by people in high positions who abuse their positions of power and authority to sexually abuse patients and actually get paid for it. And then go on to, even if they lose their license, they can go to another state and start all over again without really having to worry much about being prosecuted. We had a situation in our city where a very highly respected doctor sexually abused hundreds and hundreds of children and women and vulnerable adults, and lost his medical license in Oregon and moved to Oregon without being prosecuted. That's because Oregon does not have very strong laws, and most states don't. Right now we have some legislation for House Bill 3582 to eliminate the statute of limitations for civil action. I hope you will support it because, especially in the case of coercive sexual abuse by medical care providers, coaches, teachers, priests, sometimes children and victims don't even know because they were convinced that what happened to them was good for them or necessary or appropriate. And it might take them years or decades to ever realize. Meanwhile, they have trouble going to the doctor. They have trouble feeling safe. And they have shame and don't know actually what to do with how they feel. So thank you again for what you're doing, and whatever you can do to help support House Bill 3582 and also help strengthen Oregon's laws to protect vulnerable victims against sexual abuse. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you, both of you, Terry and Joel. Sarah and David, come on up. While you're coming up, is Deb Bogan here? Deb Bogan? Okay, I do not see or hear Deb Bogan. Seth Petrarca? And Syed Bogan? Syed Bogan? Syed? Are you here? Okay, we're going to go with these folks and we'll come back. Sarah and David.
Hello, my name is Sarah Adams. I use she, her pronouns. I want to thank you, AG Rayfield, AG Mays, for offering the community tonight an opportunity to speak. This is piggybacking on who you heard from before, which was my mother, who was just up here. The miscarriage of justice that occurred with the David Farley case, the Dr. David Farley case in Clackamas County, really does call for Oregon to do a deep dive and analysis on policies and laws that are intended to defend and protect people from sexual abuse, including what the other gentleman was speaking about as well. Especially for those who aren't familiar with our case, Dr. David Farley, a pedophile doctor with hundreds of victims, was allowed to go free, even though his Oregon license to practice medicine was permanently revoked due to gross sexual misconduct. That man has moved to another state, continues to have access to women, children, and other vulnerable members of society. As a childhood victim of Dr. Farley, it re-traumatizes me daily to imagine who he might have gained access to right now as we speak. Knowing he can abuse others still truly haunts me, and these traumas and injustices come at a grave cost to our society. I've come here today to ask that you'd be willing to prioritize and safeguard initiatives that I feel are important in this, adopting language that clearly establishes that sexual abuse is not health care. I'm depending on you to support similar outcomes as Utah, where their Supreme Court ruled in August of 2024 that sexual assault by a doctor is not health care. I'm asking for you to please consider eliminating current double standards in policies and laws that protect medical care providers from being prosecuted in situations such as mine. And I would like to know that you would safeguard, please, the Oregon Attorney General's Sexual Assault Task Force to sufficiently provide critically necessary support and education for sexual assault prevention. I believe that analyzing these systems could improve criminal justice systems' responses, achieve better outcomes for survivors, and reduce the potential harm on victims who interact with criminal justice systems.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you. David, take it away.
I thank you very much. And Attorney Generals, I just want to thank you for providing this forum and to be able to, so that compassionate and expert folks can come and speak their mind on so many important topics. And your list is getting longer for your Zoom calls, but I know you're up for the task, and you probably both have great staff helping out. I'm a wild fish advocate, and there's a lot of problems with our rivers and fish. But Oregon's wild fish and wild rivers are sacred, as are all the topics that are being brought up today. I would ask you to make sure you're protecting public lands for present and future generations against threats for clear cutting, mining, and overfishing. We've got to defend our national forests, our BLM forests, our BLM rangelands. We have to stop the robber barons. That's what we're heading back to, the way it's being set up right now. We also need to protect public employees. We need their experience, their expertise, their dedication. But we need, in some cases, for wild fish, we need to program some of the folks to work on wild fish and not hatchery fish. Because wild fish are the most resilient, they're the least expensive, and they're going to be here for generations to come. And they've been here since time immemorial. Oregon has success stories about how it's handled its fish. With Oregon Coastal Coho, Governor Kitzhaber, and subsequent governors Brown and Kotek have helped bring Oregon Coastal Coho, an ESA-listed species, to the brink of being unlisted. But many of those federal employees that would make that decision have actually been fired. So we're right on the precipice, and that's why it's so important that these federal employees be able to get back to work, because they're doing some great things. And on the Klamath River, which could be a monumental salmon recovery story. Oregon's been at the forefront on the Columbia River, and you, Attorney General Rayfield, are taking up the mantle with Governor Kotek and the position you have. Oregon's the only state that actually filed suit against the Columbia River dams, and we're thankful for that and for maintaining that work.
Thank you, David. You got to wrap up. Last thought.
Okay, that sounds great. And I wanted to just, I should have probably started with this. Climate change. Don't let that fall off the table. That's critical to all these other issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David. I heard that we have Seth. Does Seth want to come up? I think Seth is somewhere. Seth, are you here? Come on up, Seth. Yeah. You waiting? He's waiting. Just as you wait for a second, is Syed Bogan here? Syed Bogan? Okay. They might have had to leave, or Deb Bogan. Okay. Anyone who I called earlier who came? You might not know. It's like a surprise. Okay, Seth, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, take it away.
This is more of a legal question. How do you think Oregon's sanctuary status will affect cooperations with agencies such as the FBI, DEA, and ATF after, on January 20th, Trump ordered them to start enforcing immigration laws?
Why don't you go ahead and take this question, and then we'll switch into Q&A because it's our last person in public testimony. So
This is a perfect transition into question and
Nice
answer.
job. Nice
So
job, Seth.
I think one of the things that I always like to ground folks in Oregon about our sanctuary laws here in this state. And the one thing that I would note is our sanctuary laws in the state of Oregon have coexisted peacefully with multiple presidential administrations. We're talking 7 going back. And really the philosophy behind that is we don't want to use state resources for federal purposes. If it's a federal law, the federal government, they may use those resources for those purposes. But we're thinking about community safety. What we want to have in our communities is people to be able to go to law enforcement, be able to access safe places like schools, churches, hospitals, healthcare, without fear of the federal enforcement in that spot. So that is our sanctuary status laws. Don't use state dollars for federal purposes under those. Those laws are still the same. That's what they were before. That's what they are now. We don't expect that to change. The federal government is taking a more robust approach to enforcing the federal laws, but we have very strict rules in the state about how we use our resources as state. Again, that hasn't changed. Our office has put out guidance in partnership with the governor to our state agencies. We've also worked in close hand-in-hand with education partners and law enforcement. We've had roundtables in that, making sure that we understand what our roles and responsibilities in the difference of government. So as we move forward, obviously we cannot control the federal actions, but what we can do is make sure in Oregon that we're following our laws.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we do have a couple of questions that have been submitted from folks who have joined us tonight or who registered. So I'm going to start with this question. You kind of already answered it. To experience difficulty applying for or receiving Medicare benefits, similar to what Arizona is doing.
Oregon is always happy to copy Arizona, especially when it comes to the weather. But no, jokes aside, and the truth of the matter is, and I think AG Meese spoke to this incredibly importantly, we have to have a pulse on what's going on in the community. And this is a way that we can do that by having ways for you all to communicate with our office. And so we are setting up a broader platform where people can communicate that directly with our office. Also, prior to Trump taking office, we set up the Oversight and Accountability Cabinet here in Oregon, even before I was sworn into the office. And the reason we did that was to bring people together who are connected in community that is often not connected to government, so that we can learn and hear from impacts in the community, again, so we can be more responsive. I think as time goes on, attorneys general, also what I would say is all different levels of government are going to find better ways to communicate with our communities so we can know exactly what's going on. So this is an evolving process, and I'm happy to be a part of it.
Well, I love that idea. I'm going to take that one back. The Oversight and Accountability Cabinet?
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good to me.
A question from David is, how will Oregon, Arizona, and the Democratic Attorney Generals, how are you all thinking about responding to Trump's executive order attacking climate protections, or what have you all been thinking about on that?
You want to start with that?
Yeah, so, well, it's interesting. This is something that's really very near and dear to me personally, because I'm actually a former public utility commissioner from Arizona. In Arizona, we call it the Arizona Corporation Commission, and I co-authored Arizona's Renewable Energy Standard and our energy efficiency law and our net metering policies for rooftop solar. So we don't actually in Arizona technically have a climate policy, but we do have these separate pieces that really do play into climate. And then Arizona is also taking kind of a lead role on the crazy energy executive orders that he is issuing. So I guess the long and short of it is we're going to challenge it every chance we get if we can show standing. So for Arizona, for any of our states in any of these lawsuits, it's just incredibly important for us we have to be able to show standing, in other words, injury to our states. So Dan, if he's going to file that lawsuit, has got to show that that is going to damage Oregon. Same for Arizona. But I can't think of a single Democratic AG that is not interested in challenging all of that insanity.
Yeah, and I think what you hear from all Democratic AGs is an appreciation that if we are going to combat climate change, you need partnership at every single level of government. And that is really where we start off with the values-based premise, and then it becomes this difficult challenge, as you mentioned, like where is the standing? And sometimes in certain issues, as you pull the curtains back, on some labor issues, there was called Schedule F, and Graham Trainor talked a little bit from the AFL, talked a little bit about Schedule F and kind of the removal of rights from some of our federal workers. We, as Democratic AGs, were talking about this on our calls and saying, how can we engage? Well, we recognized that we were not the right voice to really bring this forward. And it was labor was the right voice. But what we ended up doing in partnership with labor, we filed amicus brief to then support the arguments in court. And so I think that is really what we're trying to do is when we don't have that direct lane, we're trying to convene, work together to make the impact on what I would argue in all of our states, right? These are things that we deeply care about.
And to add to that, there are other tools that we can use and have used in the past. One thing that we've been talking about, and I've drafted the Freedom of Information request that maybe some of my fellow AGs may join us with. So I don't know if you saw, but Trump issued an executive order or a policy that allows any polluter to apply for an exemption for their power plants just by sending them an email. I mean, it's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. And it basically says, send us an email and we will waive you off of the Clean Air Act. So I said, well, let's just do a Freedom of Information request of the EPA and find out which Arizona utilities asked for the waiver. And it's sort of then name and shame them, right? And maybe, a little bit of pushback, and maybe some utilities don't want to be seen as, polluters who got an exemption.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you, both of you. A question from Bob. What actions can be taken to assure that lawyers and judges are not attacked, fired, defunded, bullied for doing their jobs?
When I ran for this position, I did not think that I would talk so often about the value of having an independent judiciary as I do. My staff jokes that I talk about the Magna Carta like multiple times a week, and they think it's just absurd. And frankly, it is absurd to be talking about how important the independence of judiciary, not attacking our judges. Look, we live in a wild time right now. We live in a time where our judiciary is being attacked not only by our executive branch, our president, and asking to impeach judges. This is a feature of our Constitution. It was a choice we made to have an independent judiciary. It is important for a democracy to have an independent judiciary, and you have a president that is pushing all of that aside. In fact, it is a hallmark. Other constitutions look to this feature. Hundreds of years of precedent. And this is just being attacked constantly. And you have Congress tacking on, saying we should impeach judges just because they are trying to exercise their decisions. And what I would say, where I hold a little bit of hope right here, and I think A.G. Mays talked about it at the very beginning, you have Republican judges exercising independence right now, and that is pissing the president off. And you have Democratic judges doing the same thing. And that is what an independent judiciary is for. They should look at the merits of the decision in front of them without considering the parties or the political persuasions of how those are coming forward. And that doesn't mean, as I sit here, you could sit here and point to numerous Supreme Court decisions that I'm not happy with, okay? And it doesn't mean that I am pleased that it gets politicized, because I think it does. But that's what gives me hope. And we have a lot of conversations together as attorneys general where we get incredibly grumpy with lawsuits, and we look at different ways, or not lawsuits, but law firms that are capitulating to the president and the threats that they are making. And that is incredibly dangerous in a democracy.
Yeah. It's an incredibly important question, and I know the judiciary itself has had to set up its own committee to start thinking about security for the judges. What I would say is this. I think as AGs, we are probably going to increasingly have to be vocal about this. And in Arizona, we have faced a situation over the last since 2020, since a group of people in Arizona tried to overturn our electors. I have a fake electors case in Arizona. Since 2020, we have had a situation in which multiple election officials have faced death threats. Even in rural red parts of my state. One county election official had her dog killed, and she quit. And so we are seeing elections officials quit. And so my approach to this, when I ran for AG in 2022, by the way, I won by 280 votes, the closest out of 2.5. Closest statewide. They don't call me Landslide Mays for nothing, but closest statewide race in Arizona history. But what I said was, if you threaten to kill or harm or carry out any of that on an election official, I will prosecute you. And so we may not have, unfortunately, U.S. attorneys who are going to be willing to make those statements, but I think we will have AGs who are going to be willing to make those kinds of statements.
Thank you. We're running out of time, but I'm going to try to get through a couple questions and then let you both close. The question from Ollie, and you may or may not know this, but what is going to happen to federal probationary workers like themselves that were terminated on February 14th and then reinstated now that both of the reinstatement rulings have been paused?
Yeah, it's a great question, and the honest answer is we are still working our way through this. Obviously, my hope is that the administration will not do something insane like go back and refire everybody, and which is unthinkable. But this is an administration willing to do the unthinkable. Obviously, the AGs were not happy with that decision. It was discouraging. That was an appellate court decision. It's not the end of the story. I want everybody to remember that. It's not the end of the story for those probationary workers. Very hopeful that we will be able to keep them in place. They will stay in place, continue to work. But there'll be, as these attempts to fire additional workers come through the pipeline, and it is going to happen probably in the next month or so, I personally think, we will continue to sue, and we will continue to put these situations and cases in front of federal judges. And I believe in my heart that we're gonna win these cases, but for federal workers right now, it's just heartbreaking, and I cannot imagine what it's like for them.
Yeah, and I think what you'll see in some of the rulings, and I think it's when you start digging in a little bit further, the top lines sometimes when you get a bad ruling can be a little bit negative. Sometimes it's procedural issues that are shifting the way these things are working, and it's not really on the merits of the case. But that doesn't change the impact. Can you imagine? And a lot of credit to our federal congressional delegation that held a town hall specifically on the impacts on federal workers. And to be a federal worker at this time, to have go back and forth, to have our ability to get temporary restraining orders curved back a little bit under cases like this. And then you have this chilling impact that is going over our entire federal employment. Right now, would anybody in this room apply to be a federal worker? Honestly, that's a real problem. That's a problem to have a functioning government we have right now. And so this is something that's going to take a long time to heal, just as how we treat our workers in this country.
Thank you, both of you. I think we're going to run out of time here, so we're going to wrap up, but really appreciate this and want you both to have an opportunity to close us out.
Want me to go or you want to go? I'll go. All right. I just want, and I'm going to keep it very brief because I know it's getting late. I just want to thank all of you for being here, for sharing absolutely all of your stories today. Debbie, and I don't know where Debbie is, when you came up earlier, I think did not, and I think when she was standing up there, she said, I'm speechless. I really don't have words. I didn't expect to be called up. I didn't expect to be in a town hall on this. And Debbie, what I will tell you, if you are still here, I don't have my glasses on, so that's my problem. But Debbie, if you're still here, I didn't expect to be up here either, to be honest. I didn't expect when I ran for this position, this is the 100th day that I'm in office, and on the 100th day, I didn't think to tell you. I didn't think that I would be telling you that I would have filed our 13th lawsuit, against the Trump administration. I just didn't think that was a reality. This was not a reality. I'm 46. It was not a reality for 45 years of my life. This is not the way the country operated. It's a very different normal. What I can tell you is it is a privilege to be here with all of you. It is such honor as we have these town halls that people are willing to come forward and share their stories. We often sit, in fact, we were in a room just across the way talking about are there certain businesses that might be willing to stick their neck out to help us pursue different angles that we're seeing in certain cases. And it's people like that who are willing to tell your stories, like you, that are willing to come here and tell your stories. It's businesses, other folks that help us do our job, that help us protect our democracy. What I can tell you is, I had more than 10 years in public service. It's been an absolute honor in all of those roles to be able to serve, whether it was my district or the state. And it couldn't be a deeper privilege to be here with you tonight to serve all of you in this role as Oregon's Attorney General. And I look forward to working with all of you really on focusing on upholding our values as a state and where we want to be 10, 20 years down the road. At the same time, making sure that we keep our Constitution and we hold that dear and we make sure that we're following the rule of law. And it doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter if it's a Republican president or a Democratic president. Those are values we can all agree upon. So again, thank you. And also thank you, Melissa. And thank you to Portland State University for allowing us to be here tonight as well. And the individual that traveled the longest to be here, Attorney General Kris Mayes.
Well, I know we got to get out of here, but I just want to, what an honor to be with you on your 100th day. That's so cool. I love it. So just again, thank you so much for being willing to come forward and tell us your stories. It matters in two fundamental ways, all of these town halls. Number one, you saw the television crews here, right? Getting the word out to the rest of the state of Oregon and the rest of the country, these stories will reach the rest of the country, is important, right? It's important. And then the other thing it does for the AGs is it literally provides evidence for our cases and ideas for new cases. So I took 4 pages of notes. And, you know, I want to go back and talk to our folks about the comments made by the gentleman about the USDA and the canceled 90 truckloads. We need to find out if our food banks are experiencing the same things and whether we can find a state nexus on that, including our public schools that might be getting food from farmers. I noted the comment from the individual who talked about the Bonneville Power Authority. You know, and Dan and I were just talking about that as an aside. Phoenix, Arizona gets a lot of our power in the summertime when it's 120 degrees from Bonneville. It's not a well-known fact, and from the Northwest, but it is a fact. We depend on you, and then we give some of our energy to you in the winter time. So our grids are incredibly interconnected, and if Bonneville is being torn apart, it could impact the entire western grid. One could make the argument. So I think that's something we should talk about. And then, you know, the idea, I mean, of the fact that you guys have set up an AG sexual assault task force. I think we should do that in Arizona. We haven't done it in Arizona yet. So let's, you know, we don't have as many fish in Arizona as you do, but I totally agree with protecting the rivers we do have left, and on climate change, and then of course the oversight and accountability cabinet that your awesome AG has formed. So thank you for the information. Thank you for contributing to this effort to save our beautiful democracy. Thank you, guys.
I just want to say, on behalf of the crowd, thank you very much for both of your time and your energy. And as one person said, we couldn't get through the day if we didn't know that a bunch of people were out there fighting for us. So thank you so much. So thank you everyone for coming. Thank you.